Disclaimer: this story is based on true events and personal experiences. Some details have been changed to protect privacy. Viewer discretion is advised. He was just a teen when it started, barely old enough to understand what he was doing, or so I thought. At first, it seemed innocent, like a small mistake that anyone could make growing up. But it didn't stop there. It grew, twisted, and pulled us both into a place I never imagined I'd be. I wish I could say I saw the warning signs early, that I had the power to stop it before everything fell apart. But I couldn't. And that's what makes this story so hard to tell. When I first met him, he was full of life, just like any other kid his age. There was a light in his eyes, a kind of energy that made you think the world was wide open and full of possibilities. I trusted him, I trusted us. But the truth is, things were already starting to shift beneath the surface, and I didn't realize how deep the cracks were until they shattered everything I believed in. You see, infidelity is something people talk about all the time, but rarely do we get to see how it starts, how it slowly creeps into your life like a shadow you can't shake off. It's never just one moment or one choice. It's a series of small decisions, excuses, and broken promises that pile up until you're left wondering where you went wrong, or worse, if you ever really knew the person beside you. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about youth, trust, and the complicated ways people grow up, sometimes making choices that hurt not just themselves, but the people who love them. It's about how sometimes, no matter how much you want to fix things, you find yourself powerless to change the course of someone else's life. I learned that the hard way. What makes this story even more painful is that it didn't start with a stranger or a stranger's betrayal. It started with someone so close, someone I never thought would break my heart like this. Someone who was supposed to be learning, growing, and making mistakes I could forgive. But what happened was far from a simple mistake. I remember the first time I noticed something was off. It was subtle, a glance that lingered too long, a secretive phone call, a sudden distance in a smile that used to be warm and easy. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Young people have their phases, right? I thought it was just a moment of confusion, something temporary. But it wasn't. As days turned into weeks, the secrets grew heavier. There were lies, half-truths, and moments when I wanted to confront him but didn't know how to start the conversation without breaking us completely. Because that's the worst part, knowing something is wrong but being scared to face it. Scared that the truth would be worse than the silence. And then came the moment I couldn't ignore anymore. The one that made me realize this wasn't just a phase or a misunderstanding. It was a choice, one that was changing everything between us. I was stuck, caught in a web of emotions that pulled me in every direction. Love, anger, confusion, and heartbreak all at once. I tried to stop it. I really did. But sometimes, no matter how much you want to fix something, you just can't. You're left watching as the person you care about drifts away, making decisions that hurt you, and all you can do is hope they'll come back before it's too late. But hope isn't always enough. This isn't just my story. It's a story many people live through but don't talk about. The quiet suffering behind closed doors, the shattered trust, and the struggle to find answers when everything feels broken. And now I'm sharing it with you because maybe, just maybe, it can help someone else who's feeling lost in the same way. But there's more to this than just pain and loss. There are moments that made me question everything. Who I was, who he was, and what love really means when it's tested by things no one expects at such a young age. Because sometimes, the people we think we know best are the ones hiding the deepest secrets. So, what happened next? How did it all unfold? Was there a way out, or did the story end with a heartbreak that I never saw coming? I can't say just yet, because this is only the beginning and the real story is far from over. Stay with me, and I'll tell you everything, the good, the bad, and the moments that made me realize some wounds don't heal as quickly as we want them to. Because this isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about the complicated journey of trust, betrayal, and the painful lessons we learn when love isn't enough to save us. I wish I could go back to the very beginning and understand what I missed. Maybe then, things would be different. But hindsight is always clearer, and the truth is, I was blind to so many little signs. It wasn't just one big moment that changed everything. It was a slow unraveling, a feeling that something was wrong but not knowing what or how to stop it. He was so young when this all began, just stepping into the world, figuring out who he was supposed to be. I thought he was still growing, still learning right from wrong. But sometimes, growing up doesn't mean making better choices. Sometimes, it means making mistakes that hurt the people you love the most. At first, it was just small things, extra time spent on his phone, conversations that ended abruptly when I walked into the room, little white lies that seemed harmless. I brushed them off, telling myself it was part of being a teen. Maybe he was just confused, or maybe he was trying to figure out his own path. But the distance between us kept growing, and no matter how much I tried to reach out, it felt like he was slipping farther away. There were moments when I caught glimpses of the truth, texts that didn't make sense, calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I remember sitting up late at night, scrolling through his phone when he wasn't around, trying to find answers in the shadows of his screen. But the more I looked, the less I understood. It wasn't just about who he was talking to, it was about the way he was changing, the way his heart seemed to be somewhere I couldn't reach. I asked him about it many times, but he was good at hiding, at pretending everything was fine. Sometimes he'd laugh it off, saying I was overthinking. Other times he'd get angry, telling me I didn't trust him. And maybe that was the hardest part, feeling like I was losing him, but also feeling like I was the one being pushed away. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come with fireworks or loud fights. Sometimes it's quiet, almost invisible, like a secret you know is there but can't quite prove. And that silence is what makes it so painful. You want to believe in the person you love, even when everything inside you says otherwise. The more I tried to hold on, the more I realized I didn't know who he really was anymore. The boy I thought I knew was changing into someone I'd barely recognized. And the things he was hiding? They weren't just mistakes. They were choices that shattered the trust between us. I remember one day in particular, a day that feels like a turning point. He came home later than usual, looking tired, but trying to act normal. I noticed the way his phone buzzed constantly, and I could feel the tension in the air. I wanted to ask him what was going on, but the words got stuck in my throat. There was something different about him, something I wasn't ready to face. Later that night, I found out the truth. Not from him, but from someone else. A message that was never meant for me, a conversation that tore through the fragile peace we had left. It wasn't just about secrets anymore. It was about betrayal, about lines crossed and promises broken. And it hit me harder than anything else ever could. I won't lie, it broke me. The shock, the anger, the pain, they all rushed in at once, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make him see what he had done. But mostly, I just wanted to understand how this had happened, why it had happened, and if there was any way to fix it. What hurt the most was the silence after the truth came out. He didn't say much, just avoided my eyes and pretended like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Our world was different now, and there was no going back to how things were before. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How could someone so young make choices that hurt not only themselves, but the people around them? How does a teen get tangled up in lies and betrayal before they even know who they want to be? And what happens to the people who love them when they're caught in the middle of it all? I won't pretend this story is simple or easy to tell. There are days I still struggle with what happened and how it all unfolded. The pain isn't just about what he did. It's about the trust that was lost and the person I thought he was disappearing right in front of me. But there's more to this story than just heartbreak. There's the question of what comes next, whether broken things can ever be repaired, whether forgiveness is possible, and how to move forward when the past keeps pulling you back. I've been trying to figure that out every single day. And here's the thing, Even now, I don't have all the answers. The story isn't over. There are secrets still left to uncover, choices yet to be made, and consequences that are still unfolding. The hardest part is not knowing what the future holds, but having to live with the weight of the past. So, as I sit here sharing this with you, I'm still searching for closure, still hoping for a way to heal, and still wondering how a teen's mistake could change everything, and why I couldn't make it stop. After that night, everything felt like it was shifting beneath my feet. The trust we had once shared was crumbling, and I was left trying to piece together what was real and what had been nothing but a lie. It wasn't just about the infidelity itself. It was about how it changed him and how it changed me. We were no longer the same people, or maybe we never were. The hardest part was watching him become someone distant, someone I couldn't reach no matter how much I tried. He would shut down whenever I tried to talk, or turn the blame on me, saying I was too controlling or that I didn't understand what he was going through. And maybe he was right, I didn't understand. How could I? When the person I loved was hiding a part of himself from me, a part one was never meant to see. There was this other side to the story that no one talked about, the way infidelity doesn't just hurt one person, but spreads like a ripple through everyone's lives. Friends started noticing the changes too. Some drifted away quietly, not wanting to get involved in the chaos. Others asked questions I didn't have answers for. The people who cared were stuck between wanting to help and not knowing how. One night, a close friend pulled me aside, a look of concern in her eyes. She told me she had seen him with someone else, someone older, someone who didn't seem like a good influence. It was like a punch in the gut, hearing it from someone else. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself it was a mistake or a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew she was right. That revelation made everything worse. It wasn't just about a betrayal of trust. It was about the dangerous path he was heading down. I felt helpless, like I was watching him fall apart and there was nothing I could do to save him. I begged him to open up, to let me in, but he kept closing the door tighter. At the same time, I was dealing with my own guilt. I wondered if I had missed chances to stop this, if I could have done something differently to protect him or keep us together. But the truth was, some things aren't about blame, they're about choices, even if those choices come too early, when someone's still just a kid trying to figure out who they are. Meanwhile, the tension between us grew heavier. Every conversation became a careful dance around what wasn't said. I saw the frustration in his eyes, the anger that he couldn't explain. I felt it too, the sadness of knowing we were losing something precious, and not knowing if we could ever get it back. Family members started to notice the strain as well. They asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. I felt like I was carrying this burden alone, trying to protect him while also protecting myself. It was exhausting and lonely. What made it even more confusing was the way he still acted like he cared, sometimes. There were moments when the old warmth would flash through, a smile, a kind word, a touch that felt familiar. Those moments made me hold on harder, made me believe maybe there was still hope. But then the walls would go back up, and the distance would return, colder than before. I found myself caught between hope and despair, unsure which way to turn. Was this just a phase he was going through, or was it something deeper? Was there a way to reach him before it was too late? Or had the damage already been done? In the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I wondered about the real reasons behind his choices. Was it about freedom? Rebellion? Or something else, something I couldn't see? The questions piled up, and the answers stayed out of reach. And through it all, the biggest fear lingered. What if this was only the beginning? What if the mistakes made in youth set a path that couldn't be undone? What if I couldn't stop it no matter how much I wanted to? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the messy, complicated ways people grow and break and, sometimes, lose themselves along the way. And as much as I want to fix it, I'm learning that some stories don't have easy endings or any endings at all. Not yet. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of what was happening pressed harder on my chest. Every time I thought I had reached the bottom, something else pulled me deeper into the storm. The silence between us wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. It felt like walking on glass, each step more painful than the last, and yet neither of us dared to say the words that could shatter what little was left. I found myself watching him more closely, searching for any sign of the boy I once knew. But the more I looked, the more distant he became. His eyes held shadows I couldn't chase away. There were nights when I caught him staring at his phone, fingers trembling as if holding onto a secret too heavy to bear. And when he saw me watching, he'd quickly pull away, shutting the door between us tighter than ever. One evening, everything came crashing closer. I saw the texts, flashes of names and messages I wasn't meant to see. The hurt settled deep inside me, sharp and raw. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but all I could do was sit in silence, heart pounding, waiting for the moment when he would finally speak or walk away for good. The tension wasn't just between us anymore. It was in every glance, every word left unsaid. Friends and family started to ask questions again, their concern growing more obvious. But I was too afraid to admit the full story, to let anyone see just how broken things had become. And then, one night, he finally broke. Not with words, but with a look, a mixture of regret, fear, and something I couldn't quite understand. It was the moment I realized the story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about all the pain we were both carrying, tangled up in secrets and mistakes too heavy to hold. I knew then that whatever happened next would change everything. There was no going back, no pretending that the past didn't matter. The question was, were we ready to face it? Or was this the point where everything would fall apart completely? Just when I thought I was prepared for whatever was coming next, everything flipped in a way I never expected. That look he gave me, the one filled with regret and fear, was only the beginning of a deeper truth I hadn't seen coming. The kind of truth that turns your whole world upside down and makes you question everything you thought you knew. A few days after that night, I discovered something that didn't just complicate the story, it shattered it. While going through some old messages, I found evidence that he hadn't been completely honest about the people involved. It wasn't just one person. There were others, people I didn't even know about. The web of lies was bigger than I imagined, and the betrayal cut deeper than before. It was like peeling back a layer only to find something darker underneath. What made it worse was that this wasn't just about cheating or a bad choice. It was about manipulation, secrets, and a side of him I never expected. I realized he was caught in something bigger than his age or innocence. There were influences around him pulling him in different directions, people who didn't care about him, who used him for their own reasons. I confronted him again, hoping for honesty, but this time he shut down completely. He refused to talk, refused to explain, leaving me alone with the growing questions and fears. The more I dug, the more I understood how tangled the situation really was and how powerless I felt to fix it. The stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just a teenage mistake anymore. It was a dangerous path, one that could lead to consequences neither of us were ready to face. And yet, despite everything, part of me still wanted to believe there was a way back, that the boy I once knew was still in there somewhere, fighting to break free. But as the days passed, the silence grew louder and the distance between us felt impossible to close. The question now wasn't just if I could make it stop, it was if I could even survive what was coming next. The breaking point came on a night I'll never forget. After weeks of silence and tension, he finally opened up, not in words, but in a way that forced everything into the light. I found him sitting alone in his room, eyes hollow, the weight of everything finally catching up. For the first time, he didn't run from the truth. He admitted the mistakes, the lies, and the dangerous choices he'd made under pressure from people who didn't have his best interests at heart. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was what I needed, a raw, honest moment where we both faced the reality of what had happened. The infidelity, the secrets, the broken trust, it was all real, and it all hurt. But it was also the first step toward healing. We talked through the long nights, unraveling the tangled mess of emotions, trying to find a way back from the edge. He promised to cut ties with those toxic influences, to start making better choices, not just for himself, but for us. It felt like a fragile hope, but hope all the same. I realized that forgiveness wouldn't come overnight, and the road ahead would be hard. But maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what was broken. Just as I was beginning to believe we might find a way forward, a final twist shattered that fragile peace. I discovered a hidden message, one he hadn't meant for me to see. It wasn't from an outside person this time. It was from him. A note where he confessed that some things were too deep to fix, that the mistakes he made had changed him forever. The pain wasn't just about betrayal, it was about losing himself in the process. In that moment, I understood this wasn't just a story of infidelity or teenage mistakes. It was a story about the struggle to find identity, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. And sometimes, the hardest battles aren't with others, but within ourselves. After reading that hidden message, everything shifted again, but this time in a way that helped me understand him better, not just the mistakes he made, but the pain he carried inside. It wasn't just about what he did. It was about who he was becoming and the struggle to find himself in a world that felt overwhelming. We didn't have all the answers, and the road ahead wasn't easy. But we began to rebuild, slowly, carefully. He started seeking help, talking to people who could guide him through the mess he'd found himself in. I learned that healing takes time, and that sometimes, the best way to support someone you love is by giving them space to grow, even when it's hard. Our story is a reminder that infidelity isn't just about betrayal, it's about broken trust, lost innocence, and the complicated journey of growing up. Sometimes, the people we love make choices that hurt us deeply, but those choices don't have to define them or us forever. Looking back, I realized that while I couldn't make it stop, I could choose how to move forward. Forgiveness, understanding, and patience became the pillars of our healing process. It's not a perfect ending, but it's real, a story of mistakes, lessons, and hope. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that no matter how dark things get, there's always a chance to find light again. Sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the strongest growth. And sometimes, love means holding on not just to what was, but to what could be. 4.